This conference will now be recorded.
So like there's one test that had like some stuff to do today, other 10 minutes, but and then
Just so they're, your transcript is due.
it wasn't though.
Yours wasn't?
Nope.
Wow.
He's having a test.
So you did 4 weeks of things?
3 weeks.
Yeah, so it should be 1 day of interview, 1 day of the 10-minute clip and then
Yeah.
transcript, and then 1 day of the reflection.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how ours was different.
Yeah. So like he's just having us turn in all the documents at once. And then a week after usually a 10-minute clip.
Okay.
Yeah. And we like I was like
All right, so I'm going to go on and get started. Okay, so today we're going to talk about resilience, the third part of psychological capital. But first, I want to review from last week. What were you able to try or to start doing to increase your self-efficacy? And just as a reminder, the things that we learned last week were finding a role model, a cheerleader, reflecting on mastery experiences, figuring out how you're going to manage your stress, savoring wins, and then we talked about SMART goals, making them specific and measurable, time-bound, and then we talked about SMART plus goals, so using an approach goal, using primers, implementation intentions. So what of these things were you able to do last week? Yes, Jordan.
so really stressful time with like projects and interviews and just all these reports that are due at once, and I let the stress like overtake me, for lack of better words right now. And I had to just stop everything for school for a couple hours, and just like reel myself back in. And I just like didn't touch anything school wise, and I reached out to like my cheerleader, and she was just like you're doing fine, like you're getting everything done, and I just had to like take the night off and refocus the next day. And so the next day, I just rewrote everything I had to do out and started like planning when I was gonna get it done by. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So Jordan's saying, for those of you online, that it was a very stressful time. Projects are piling up at school, and she felt so overwhelmed that she just stopped one night. And it sounds like you did two things. One, you realized your stress, right? So you were managing your stress. And two, you called in a cheerleader to tell you things were going well and to keep going. But it sounds like you also just needed that break and then started up again the next day. And I think they're even kind of relying on hope, where you're writing everything out, all the steps of everything that you have to do. And then to further do that, you could break it into smaller steps. But so that's a great example of using several different things. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right, so this week we're going to talk about resilience. And the first thing I want to tell you about resilience. I am recording. Thank you, Sanette. When adversity strikes, what we hear about is post-traumatic stress disorder. But what's really important to understand is that only this this leftmost quadrant is post-traumatic stress disorder. So you can kind of think of it as 25, when adversity strikes, 25% of people may develop post-traumatic stress disorder, but the other 75% have what's called post-traumatic growth. And you may have experienced this yourself when you've had a very traumatic or upsetting event, and you're able to bounce back from it and even come back stronger, right? So what gets left out is that 75% of people actually have post-traumatic growth, which is a really positive thing when we really focus on the negative thing. Similarly, if I may have mentioned in this class, when Martin Seligman did his learned helplessness experiments with the dogs in the cages, and they would get shocked and they jump, a third of them still tried. So 2/3 of them developed learned helplessness, but a third did still try. So I think that's also very important that we do have that capacity there. And to build resilience, the things that you would work on and the way that we measure it is emotional regulation, which comes from some of the mindfulness things that we learned, impulse control, self-efficacy, which we learned about last week, reaching out, so connecting with others, empathy, optimism, which we'll learn about next week, and causal analysis, or the ability to see the cause and effect between the things you do, between the things that others do, and be able to see how things are caused. So today, there's a lot that goes into resilience. There's lots of different techniques, and I'm going to shortcut us and take us to a more advanced one that's very quick, because you're all psych students, and so you have an ability to think about your thoughts, right? So real-time resilience is this ability to reframe your mind chatter in the heat of the moment. That's the technique. And these are some pictures that reflect it, of what you're going to do today. And so this is all based on the cognitive model, which for those of you that are clinical, this is very familiar. For those of us in IO, not so much. So the cognitive model is that we have an event, an adversity, and that triggers a belief, and that belief has consequences. And so here you can see a person doesn't get selected for choir. They believe they have a terrible voice and they're not good at singing. And the consequences, they're sad and they give up on practicing singing. When similarly, they could have a belief of, I need to practice more, maybe next time, and they feel okay and they practice more and they continue to do something they love. So what you can see is the same adversity can generate different beliefs. And the key to resilience is to know your mind chatter and to separate the A, the B, and the C, right? So when you're having an event that's triggering you, to be able to label what is the event, what is the belief, and what is my consequence. So what we're going to do right now is practice with a partner. So tell a story, something challenging that happened to you in the last week. And partner A is going to tell partner B, then partner B is going to pull out the A, the B, and the C from the story, and then you're going to switch. Partner B is going to tell a story, and partner A is going to pull out the A, B, and C. And so I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. And online, we're just going to type in.
This is
So online, you can type here. So those of you that are comfortable can tell a story. And then online, we can try to pull apart the A, the B, and the C.
Small example of what the sign.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Activated you last week. And then the other person can have their day, accidentally do it all. Yeah. What the event was, the belief, and then see the consequences.
I get into your life and investors. When she was like, did you let her on?
Yeah, I was like, I didn't talk.
I want to just stop it. And just she was yeah. I was trying to like answer. Mine also still got it. So I had an assignment due yesterday, Wednesday. So my professor told us that she would give us feedback on a project that was related to it on inside Monday. And the corrections we were to do the second project. And I never got it. And so, oh yeah. Wow. Because I was so kind of Monday, I couldn't do it. Tuesday, full recycling. She got really frustrated. Yeah. As best I could. Professor asked me to really have to come up to Tuesday. And extend it to today. So, yeah. So, especially trip for the righteous thing. Yeah. Like I would have done it in how far do you but she used to do that. Okay, so I should she got out of this. Clinical, but so I how far along? It's very much that. Yeah, I'm part-time. What's the injury? Oh, that's so much. Like I was under 2 years full time. Yeah.
You work too?
Yeah. Well, I'm part of like undergraduate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. Yeah. But yeah, especially like personal, yes. For a woman who's muscular, yoga. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Do you work?
No, I have a nine-year-old son, so.
She was living her.
Yeah.
No. But she like goes back to school when I do. But yeah.
Just trying to keep my.
Okay. So I'm going to debrief the experience. I think most of you are finished, right? Okay. And I was working with people online, and I think this is always a little bit more challenging than you think it's going to be. So, for example, I had difficulty pulling Miriam's belief from her story. Now, online it's a bit more difficult, but when you hear people talking and they're going on and on, sometimes it's easier to pull what the belief is. So, what was it like? Were you able to pull the belief, or was it challenging?
I think we were able to pull our beliefs pretty easily.
Pretty easily? Okay.
When I went to go say, like, okay, so your adversity was this, your belief was this, we both kind of paused for a second, and then she like said a little bit more about the story to give me what I needed to pull it out.
Ah, okay. All right, how about you guys?
I think we got a chance to see what the belief was. Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit longer because it came from back in.
Okay. All right. So the first step in this real-time resilience is being able to separate the belief from the event, right? Because we commingle it up together and we think that it's inevitable. Okay, so this is a flow chart of what to do when you have a reaction of an adversity that does not work for me. And what I mean by that, and one of the common phrases in positive psychology is, does it help me show up in the world the way I want to show up? And so if the consequence to whatever has happened has you not showing up, then go through this chart, right? So the first thing is, do you have time? Yes, then you can go further into thinking tracks, which we won't cover here. Detecting icebergs, which we've mentioned a little bit before. And next week we'll cover more about why and what next beliefs. But if you don't have time, if you're in a hurry and you're in the right state of mind, meaning that your brain feels connected and you're not charged over the issue, then you can do the real-time resilience. And if you're charged, obviously calm yourself down and then you can come back and do the real-time resilience. So this is a great picture of when we're stressed, we absolutely don't have access to this top part of our brain to help ourselves. It's all down here, what we call the monkey brain. And so the shortcut of this is there are 3 sentences to use to yourself. When you have a belief that's not working for you, you talk back to it with your mind chatter and say, that's not true because, or another way of seeing that is, and then the most likely outcome is an I can. So that's not true because, another way of seeing it is, that addresses why beliefs and judger thoughts. So if we go back to week 2 and we think about the judger mindset, remember from growth mindset, the judger mindset, you're talking back to your judger. Right? And there's a great example I think I have next week that talks about sort of splitting up the thoughts and talking about, I'm hungry. I wonder what's for dinner, which is factual. Pete's probably going to make dinner and it's probably going to have lots of bread in it, and that's not good for my weight. And then why does Pete always cook things that, he doesn't seem to really care about? Anyway, so do you see where I went from a factual thought into judger, right? And so that's not true because it's really kind that he cooks dinner. Another way of seeing it is I could just not eat the bread, whatever. I'm making up stories to this. It's not my story, but I liked it because I think that's frequent. You start thinking about something and then all of a sudden you find yourself down a rabbit hole on why that person's so terrible. Okay, the most likely outcome is an I can. This is what next and worry thoughts. And here, what we're doing is sort of realizing that there's this base underlying fear that we can't do it, right? And so, for example, let's take midterms or tests or reports that you have to turn in. And somewhere in the back of your brain is this low-lying fear that you won't be able to do it. And if you won't be able to do it, then you won't pass this class. And you don't pass this class, then you're not going to graduate from graduate school. And if you don't do that, you won't have a career, and then you won't have a job, and then you're going to be homeless on the street with no food, right? And so there's something in your brain that's worrying about that. And so sometimes it's helpful to explore this negative in a really silly way, like I just did, to kind of acknowledge, hey, that is there, and then to acknowledge the other way, which is fantastically positive. Like, this is going to be the best report ever. It's going to be so great that my instructor is going to nominate it for some awards. I'm going to win awards. I'm going to become a famous person. I'm going to be on the Oprah show, whatever. And you go that way and you realize neither of those are going to happen, right? The likelihood is so small from the event of you doing a paper or a journal. Not that those things are not possible, but from this thing that you're worrying about. And so with this thing, what is the most likely outcome, right? What's something in the middle? Okay, so list your frequent mind chatter, particularly thoughts that start with I'm a, he, she thinks I'm, you know, getting into other people's thoughts. She, he is a, I'll never, I always, he, she always, this, that is so, and I'm going to. So practice using your talk back statements to talk back to the mind chatter, right? So what you want to try to catch yourself is doing these absolutes. I'm always, he, she always. And then what another way of seeing that is, right? And start practice that, because what we're going after is a more flexible thinking. Okay, so the next activity, you're going to pick an adversity that generates a lot of B's for you, right? Something that's very triggering. And you're going to tell your partner the gist of the thoughts you have. So this has to be something that's triggering for you, that activates some beliefs possibly about you or about your particular experience. And then your partner is going to repeat the beliefs back to you. So you think you're not smart enough to write this paper. And then you're going to say, that's not true because I've written papers in these 5 other classes, and I wrote papers here, and this other thing happened to me. And so you're going to keep going, and they're going to, basically, it's like that tennis racket picture that I showed at the beginning. They're going to hit your belief back to you, and you're going to hit back with one of these statements. That's not true because, another way of seeing it is, the most likely outcome is, and I can. And then I also have a note here, it has to pass the gut test, right? It has to be something that you feel that you believe. Right, so you can't just say, oh, no, that's not true because I'm a really good writer. You don't really believe that. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. And online, we can maybe go with the scenarios or see if there's some new scenarios and comment on other people's work.
It's online. Yeah. I was just saying, or like with the about the so it's all these things are just triggering not being comparable experience.
I'm not sure if I do it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't have. I'm not gonna do that. Yeah. Yes.
So, I think
So what are your?
I guess, okay, so then. I think so, yeah.
That you are in the foster experience, but
So that's not true because I do have a lot of experience and I do have those natural skills and I have things that brings it to the goal. And I have a couple that I want to experience from other people. And it's just, yeah, and I like how I never never seeing all that is, I think it's just looking at it from, like some opportunity and judging.
That's not true because. Oh, I didn't get messages like that. Take it upon yourself. But you said really like sincerity.
Okay, do you guys need another minute?
We're ready.
Yeah. Well, you're good? Okay, another minute?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. In those times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to bring it back in and ask you guys to debrief and talk about what this experience was like. So one, could you pick out the beliefs again? And then two, what was it like hitting back at those beliefs?
hard to get back at some of them more than others.
Okay. Hard to hit back at some of them more than others. All right. Agreement around the room. Okay. Yeah.
I think because like some of those I tell myself those a lot, and so they seem true.
Yeah, it's hard to pass that test.
It was hard to pass the gut test. Okay. I found it easy because when I listed out all the reasons why it wasn't true, I was like, yeah, that's a pretty harsh judgment on some small errors when the rest of the time it's going pretty well. Right? I don't know, that for me. Like for me, it was confirming to see all of the things that I'm doing well. And I don't feel like I feel like I'm always pointing out, I want to get better at this thing, and I don't look at all, oh, well, these are the things I've become better at in the past I work. For me. Anybody else? Yeah, Jordan.
So when Katie was like repeating back the beliefs, I kind of had this thought of like, why am I thinking that? Because it helped me like realize like how not, I can't think of the word.
Not helpful.
Yeah.
The belief is.
Yeah.
Right.
And so like I can see why I would think that, but I have a lot of ways to counteract it. And so it's just, I guess, training myself to be more quicker about counteracting those thoughts when they happen.
Right, but I think that self-awareness of the belief, that's the first critical part, right? So I think it's the awareness of, I have this belief, and then I'm practicing changing this belief, right? Okay. Okay, so when to use this skill? When you know the thought is pessimistic. Always, everything, never, judgments, worst case scenario thinking. Okay, so here's the summary. Most people don't take the time to question their mind chatter. They assume if it came from my mind, it must be true. And there's a bumper sticker I love that is, you don't have to believe every thought you have, right? Remember, they're random neural impulses a lot of the time. And then we latch on to it and we weave a story out of it, right? So realizing it's a random thought, and mindfulness helps with this, and you can let it go, right? The other thing is, when you realize the beliefs about yourself or your mind chatter or the way you're talking to yourself, you realize you would never be that mean, cruel, judgmental, or pessimistic toward another. You would never say those things out loud, but you say them to yourself. So I think a big goal is changing this mind chatter to be more friendly, right? And one of the things we say about meditation is you're simply making friends with yourself, because if you're willing to sit on a cushion by yourself for 20 minutes, you're spending time with yourself. And most people find that really uncomfortable and don't like it. And part of that is, once you start doing it, it is a little bit easier to be kind because you've been putting in the practice of being friends with yourself. Okay, it's a fast skill that takes slow time to develop. And the result is that you'll have more flexible and accurate thinking, and more positive thinking as well. It decreases the potency of negative emotions through realistic statements, and increases the experience of neutral and positive emotions, and helps people become more resilient and better able to bounce back from adversity. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to think about, what do you want to do next week, in the upcoming week, to practice resilience? So something specific, maybe that you're going to do once a day or 1 minute a day, and then share with us in the discussion board. And then to close us out, so think about what that is. To close us out, I just want to review where we have been. So the first week was positive emotions, and you all learned about intentional activities and a gratitude practice. The second week, we learned about learner versus judger path and questions. The third week you learned some tools on breathing, mindfulness meditation, loving kindness meditation. Then hope, where you learned how to break down your goals into smaller steps, generate alternative pathways, and plan for obstacles. And then last week was self-efficacy, where we talked about getting a role model, practicing, getting those mastery experiences, having a cheerleader, SMART goals and SMART plus goals. So sort of the small checks are all of the tools that you have so far to work with, right? And then this week we added real-time resilience thinking. So with that, I am done. You guys are free to go. And I'll see if there's any questions online. I saw some chats.
We had one more SES session face master and like a kind of a overview.
So Miriam, and you said, can we access the videos? Yes, you can always access the videos. They're on the Canvas shelf. Thanks, Paul. Through Canvas, Miriam. Everything's on Canvas, and I'll go there right now to show you. And you can see the video links here. And for the last 2 weeks, I have the video you can download or the link. Even after the term, I don't know about that. But you could always download them and save them somewhere. But anyway, here they are. I'm not sure how long Canvas stays up. Okay, you're welcome. All right, thank you all.
Yeah, have a good rest of your weekend, good weekend. Thank you. Bye.
See you next week, online folks.
Bye. See you next week. Good luck tonight.
Oh, I'm going to the library.
Oh, Charlotte.